hospitalized, probably in an institution for quite a while, because they are judged a danger to themselves or others. Sleep apnea is probably the one, it's probably the disorder that most of you know the most about, because it affects a lot of people in our families. If anybody is snoring in your family, that doesn't necessarily mean they have sleep apnea, but if they have some of the other features, the other characteristics, it may certainly be very dangerous. If someone in your family is a snorer, and heavy snoring, and they are overweight, or a smoker, or drink quite a bit, or heaven forbid do all three, then they may have sleep apnea, which I need to tell you can be deadly. Sleep apnea is a sleep disorder characterized by temporary cessations or stopping of breathing during sleep and repeated momentary awakenings as if the person is gasping for breath. Apnea can be treated with surgery to the nasal cavity. Weight loss has a huge effect on snoring of any type, whether it's apnea or not. And of course there is a breathing map, which is constant positive air pressure, called a CPAP. Basically, when someone has sleep apnea, what's happening is they are laying on their back a lot of times, and the tongue located here will actually lay across the epiglottis, creating a blocking of the airway. This deep sleep stage, sleep apnea, the snoring seems to happen most in the deep sleep stage, and the person will wake up feeling exhausted. And because of the stress of repeated lack of oxygen to the person's heart, or to the person's lungs, and thereby to the heart, basically it can bring on early death. 1 in 25 people suffer from some degree of sleep apnea, and people can have very loud snoring attacks up to 400 times a night. Other sleep disorders are less common. They include somnambulism, which I told you about, sleepwalking. Happens a lot in childhood, usually goes away. It is genetic, it does run in families. I'm not going to make any jokes about everybody in the family walking in their sleep. Enuresis is bedwetting, happens during non-REM sleep, anywhere from stage 2 on, as I mentioned in the last module, the video in the series before this one. Sleep talking can occur while asleep and occurs in non-REM sleep, except for stage 1. There's really not much sleep talking in stage 1. And some people talk more in their sleep than others. It is genetic. And then nightmares. Nightmares, again, will be covered in the dream section, okay, which will be a different video, and that will be on the second part of Module 24 in the Myers series, Psychology for AP, second edition. A couple of last items. A lot of you have heard of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, also known as crib death. It's the sudden unexplained death of an infant, and one of the ways to actually combat SIDS is to make sure that an infant should sleep on their back or on their side. If they go over on their stomach, because their muscles are as weak as they are being newborns, their weight of their body may actually compress their lungs, and they basically asphyxiate themselves. Very sad. Now, there's actually monitors on bassinets and cribs where the baby can put monitors on the baby, and we know that when it rolls over on the stomach, the alarm will go off. Night terrors is its own section of sleep disorders as well, not the same as nightmares. And I mentioned earlier, this night terror is basically a sleep disorder where a person is somehow some level of high physiological arousal, heartbeat and breathing, and the appearance of being terrified. Unlike nightmares, night terrors actually occur in delta wave sleep or non-REM stage 3 sleep. And it's usually within 2 or 3 hours of falling asleep. And there's really not much to remember except for the fact that these scary things wake you up. Nightmares are bad dreams. They have a storyline, and we'll talk more about them in the dream section. Again, night terrors versus nightmares. Night terrors occurring here in the earlier stage 3, and that should say stage 3. This is an old slide. Remember, 3 and 4 have been combined now in the last 5 or 6 years of sleep research. And we have this stage 3 delta wave sleep. High arousal, being terrified. Total panic. Hallucinations occur. Most common in childhood. Probably a lot of you teenagers have actually had night terrors before. Not remembered, but basically very, very, very frightening. High arousal, but again, seldom remembered. Other sleep disorders even more rare than those. Klein-Levin syndrome is where a person might fall asleep for several days. Sleep-wake disorders are bodies that don't run on that 25-hour clock that I mentioned earlier, but in the other video on Module 23, but 26, 7 hours, and they actually fall asleep an hour later each night, which obviously is going to disrupt your schedule with regard to work. Hypnophobia is the fear of going to sleep. Hypnalgia is pain while you're actually dreaming. Periodic limb movements are movements of your arms, where basically there are creepy crawly feelings in your arms, and the only way to get rid of them is to shake them, and of course by shaking them you wake yourself up. Same thing with restless leg syndrome. Again, the creepy crawly, non-accurate nerve endings give you the feeling that there's something going on there in your legs, and again you kick them to stay away. In summary, we know that sleep apnea occurs in 1 in 20 people. We know that high arousal and appearance of being terrified is night terrors and happen mostly in children. Sleepwalking is about 20% of 3 to 12-year-olds have had at least one episode, and 5% of children have had repeat episodes of sleepwalking. Sleep talking is a disorder of nonsensical or garbled speech. Again, it occurs mostly in children, and again, you can't carry on a conversation with someone who is sleep talking. And finally, night terrors again are in stage 3 sleep. What this follows is a graphic organizer basically showing what we've discussed in this module. We have again the non-REM stages of sleep from 1 through 3, the suprachiasmatic nucleus with the production of melatonin that allows you to fall asleep, the different sleep theories that we covered back in Module 23, and the sleep disorders here covered in Module 24. We also talked at the very beginning of this with regard to REM deprivation and REM rebound, and REM characteristics was discussed on Module 23. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for dreams next in our series.